I was in a near fatal car crash on the 3rd of May 2025. And if you're new here, I feel like I would be doing myself a disservice if I didn't reintroduce myself. So, I am Gypsy Jens, a travel content creator, and now I'm thinking lifestyle. I started this page just before the pandemic. And when I say just before, I mean in 2020, just before the world changed as what we knew it. And I did not realize that the best travel year that I would have would be the year before, which is 2019. I was fortunate and lucky and blessed enough to travel to 10 different destinations across 3 or 4 different continents. So you can imagine the excitement I had when I was getting ready to start this new YouTube channel and take all of you around the world with me. Well, little did I know, or did we know, that the world was going to come to a stop. And through that, I found it difficult to continue creating in such a way that was long form and palatable slash digestible or digestible for YouTube. So I stayed in my safe place, which is Instagram. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, my @ is Gypsy Jens. I then slowly pivoted over to TikTok. My @ is also Gypsy Jens. And I have stayed in those two comfort zones for the past 3 years. My Instagram page has been running for 6 years, and my TikTok page has been running for 3 years. And what I realized very shortly after transitioning to TikTok is that I'm actually not fussed about the numbers. I don't want to be a macro influencer. I don't even want to be a micro influencer. And I for sure don't want to fall under the category of influencer. I don't mind being a creator and a storyteller to its highest or lowest degree. So, here I am about to bring you on the journey of the most tragic thing that could happen to me personally, but it's also on the line of every human being. I was in a near fatal car crash on the 3rd of May 2025. At the time of recording this video, it is the 1st of November, and I've got 2 days until it will be a full 6 months since the night that not only changed my life, but quite literally nearly ended my life. So I give you the history and the background of me being a travel content creator because in true fashion, on that night, I was traveling. Now, I realized that a lot of people do not acknowledge driving as a form of traveling. Do you understand that there are RVs for a reason? There are also caravans for a reason. There are trucks for a reason. These motor vehicles are designed for long distance traveling or long distance driving. You can also long distance drive in the car that you own or the car that you are renting, which is exactly what I chose to do on that particular night. So let me paint the scene for you. It's the 2nd of May, right? We have just entered into part 2 of quarter 2, and things are going pretty well. You know, I've gone on my annual trip to Trinidad Carnival, which, if you don't follow me, you have been missing out on the greatest show on earth for the past 6 years. But that's a story for a different day. You know, I had just traveled to London. I went for 2 days just literally to see my family, hug my mom, hug my dad, hug my kid brother, squeeze my godchildren, all in time for Easter. And then I've come back. At this particular point, I had decided that swimming or learning to swim was almost pivotal to how much I enjoy traveling. So, what I mean by that is I could not swim at all. I couldn't make a stroke. I couldn't float. I could not tread water, like nothing. I am the girl that you could put in a bikini and get me into the sea to take a few pictures, and I'm gonna head right back out and sit on the sunbed and do what I do best, which is to tan. So, aside from tropical destinations, one thing I have really enjoyed doing since moving here, which is another part of my fantastic life story. I'm originally born and raised in London, England, and I moved to Toronto, Canada in 2021. So I've lived 2 or 3 lives since the year 2020. So we will be going up and down, back and forth, but we will get there. So since moving here, I realized that traveling, or the freedom of traveling, is not as existent as it was, one, with the job that I had in London, and two, with the vacation slash annual leave that you also get in London. How does somebody that travels a minimum of 6 times a year squeeze that into just 2 weeks? Well, this is where you start to make use of the days off that you have from work. Now, any regular working person, which we can all agree this generation is far from the regular 9 to 5. But let's just say you have a regular corporate type of job, which means you work 5 days a week and you have 2 days off. In these 2 days off, I was going to drive up to New Jersey just for a night out to have a change of scenery. I was entering a new period of life and I couldn't actually see where it was going. I could just feel that the transition was coming. And I thought, you know what? This might actually have to be the time that I settle down completely. So let me just do one last road trip for the summer and see how I get on. So my friend was having an event that night, and I knew that if I confirmed to him that I was coming that night, he would be completely against it. Because when I'd mentioned it a couple of weeks before, he was completely against it. One thing about me, or one thing people say about me, is that I'm very stubborn. Now, this can be taken in the most negative way as possible, but I like to put my positive spin on everything, which basically means I don't like to take no for an answer. If I can see that there's a way for me to do something without breaking the law, hurting anybody's feelings, causing any trouble, please believe I'm going to do that. So I had previously booked a car rental, and I had booked two. So I was supposed to go to New York for the Soca Baby boat ride on the 18th of May. Well, the 17th of May this year, because I had done that last year. Drove to New York for the weekend for the Soca Baby boat ride and the Dancehall Ute boat ride hosted by DJ Private Ryan out of Trinidad. And this year was going to be the second year of my annual road trip. I had two friends that live in New York or around the New York area, and their birthday is that weekend. So I thought, why not? Let's make this an annual tradition where I come up annually, spend the weekend with you guys, and come back home. Now, my foresight was, let me just see if I can do the drive to New Jersey, because I haven't done it by myself since 2022. And I woke up on the morning of the 2nd of May and I thought, you know what? Actually, I'm going to do this. I feel like I'm in a good headspace. I feel like I've already made the plan and made the arrangement to do this. So let's just do it. That morning, I left the house. Well, previously that night, I had my swimming lesson and I was feeling A-OK. I managed to swim the full length of the pool with no noodle and no assistance from my instructor. And I was feeling extremely emotionally proud of myself. So I'm going off of that high. I wake up on Friday, the 2nd of May, and I'm like, okay, there's a few things that I need to do before I start this drive. One thing is have breakfast, because I am notorious for forgetting to eat. As hungry as I stay, my brain has a battle of we've got things to do and let's just do it until we can, eat. So get breakfast, buy an outfit, pick up the rental, go to my house and pick up some stuff, and then make my way. I must also add that this particular weekend, as in the 4th of May, would have been my late sister's 6th anniversary. Now, being abroad and living here by myself, as in I have no direct, immediate family in this country, days and anniversaries like this will mean a lot more to me than they would to the average person, i.e., my friends or my friends that are now like family. So I do my best not to put as much emphasis on the day as if I was home with my siblings and my parents, my nieces and my nephews. I wake up, I decide, yep, I'm going to do this drive. I go to the mall to buy myself an outfit because why would you not? I go to Denny's to get breakfast because this is the only place that I can see myself eating enough food to sustain. I get back to my house, I shower, I put on my road outfit, and I get back in the car. I set the GPS and it says 8.5 hours. So the event was supposed to start at 10 p.m. and my aim was to arrive around 10 or 11 p.m. I did exactly that. Part of the way, I think for the first 2.5 hours of the drive, my friend from London, I was on the phone to her, just catching up, just, talking to her as you do. And then as I finished that conversation, I logged onto teamsoca.com, who were raising or fundraising, sorry, for one of our DJ friends who we found out was quite sick, this year. And on the 30th of October, he just transitioned to heaven's side. So there's so much about this particular drive that is just so important to me that I just could have never guessed, fathomed, planned, imagined what was going to happen just short of 12 hours later. So I make a pit stop for food. And at that point, I realize that the sun's still standing and this is probably going to be my last stop until I arrive at my destination. So this would be a good time to do my makeup, set my hair, get changed in the washroom of the Burger King that I stopped at, and then continue the drive. I had more than enough gas/petrol to go the full way. I arrive at the parking lot. I realize it's about 10 minutes away from the venue. So I sit there for a little bit because I am by myself, by the way. So I've done this whole drive by myself. I've spent the day by myself. And as much as I travel the world by myself, anxiety still hits. So I still had a slight wave of anxiety of, oh my days, I'm about to go into this venue and I only know one person who's the event organizer and the DJ. So the chances of me liming with anybody during this fete are second to none. But that's also not the reason I came out here. Pay for parking, and I make my way to the venue. And I acknowledge that he isn't here yet, which means my mission has been accomplished. I've managed to drive all the way from Toronto right through to New Jersey without him calling me, messaging me, which is not the norm because we speak every single day. And I just had a feeling that he was going to be too busy on this particular day to not be able to pay attention to my whereabouts. We'll stick a pin on that and we'll come right back to that. So I get in the venue, I realize he isn't there. So, I go in the ladies, I spruce up myself properly, make sure my hair's still fine, my outfit still looks good, and then I hide. I take as far back of a space where I have direct view of the DJ booth and I can see when he comes in. So I see when he comes in, and of course, he's the surprise. What the hell are you doing, kid? I'm like, well, I told you I was coming. And yeah, I had such a fun night. I don't want anybody to think that I was not having the best time. I just traveled. I was in a soca fete by myself. Like, these are like three of my top favorite things to do besides eating. The next day, which would have been the 3rd of May, I was looking for places to view. And for some reason, this particular landlord was, well, he wasn't the landlord, sorry, he was the letting agent. He seemed to be quite particular about allowing the landlord to take me on as a tenant. I had ticked all the boxes: excellent credit score, um, a reference from my job, you know, everything that you need in order to be signed on as a tenant, I had provided him with. And on my drive up to New Jersey, he messages me and says that I need to be back here by 12 o'clock to sign the tenancy agreement. And I was a bit thrown off, to be honest, because the tenancy agreement should have started on the 1st of May. And I was basically chasing him to find out what was happening because I myself wasn't sure if I was going to be accepted. Receiving that message kind of threw me off a little bit, but I was like, I'll make it work. I had no plans to stay up in New Jersey that night anyway. So I brought everything with me, you know, my mini toiletry bag, everything I needed to kind of spruce myself up again for part two. Again, such a fun night. I tell my friend I'm leaving, and he automatically is like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, what do you mean? The night's done." And he's like, "Can't you stay by me?" And I'm like, "Oh no, there was no plans to do that." He's like, "But everybody's staying." I'm like, "I'm aware, but it's fine. I've got stuff to do tomorrow, so I'm just gonna make my way back." So I walked to the car. I took off my makeup. I got dressed again in my full tracksuit that I drove up in. I then rested for a bit. I want to tell you about half an hour, 45 minutes. And then I drove around the corner. So about 5 minutes drive to the gas station to put gas in the car, and then continued driving. Or I started the drive back to Toronto. And I've done this drive a minimum of twice a year since 2021. And I remember getting to a certain point where I saw a sign that said rest stop. And I was like, I've never seen that sign before. And it was just clear as day, rest stop in a green background. I was like, oh, maybe that's a sign that I should take another stop before I continue this drive. And so said, so done. I saw the sign, I pulled in, but I was confused. Every other rest stop I've done has been like a big plaza where it's got like your Burger King, your Starbucks, your Dunkin' Donuts. It's got restaurants in it, and it has a washroom that you go into. So you park the car and you physically go into a building. This was not that type of rest stop. This was literally the truckers rest stop where you've got the diagonal um, parking spaces and the trucks just lined up and people are sleeping in their car. Now, I don't know about you. I can tell you I'm as confident as it comes, but I am very aware of my surroundings. I did not feel comfortable in this particular parking lot. But again, bringing it back to my stubbornness, I've already committed to stopping. So the least I can do is stop. I've stopped. I've set another 30-minute alarm on my phone. I've tried my best, to decompress. And before you know it, the alarm's vibrating and it's time to go again. So I get out of the car and, I do a walk around the car. I pray around the car. I double check that nothing has been put on the car. I don't watch enough shows, but again, I'm aware enough to figure out how some of these things go, like a tracker or something. I stretch. I get back in the car. And I promise you, I could not tell you what happened after that. I can also promise you the only reason I can recite all of that is because I vlogged right up until that point. I vlogged when I went to the mall to buy my outfit, went to get breakfast, went to get the rental, went home to change, jumped in the car to start the drive. The road was so clear, I was able to record a part of me driving, listening to Team Soca. When I stopped for food and did my makeup, when I arrived in the parking lot, when I got to the venue, when I was in the venue, when I was fetting, when I got back to the car, I vlogged absolutely everything. And I can almost promise you that I would not have any recollection of any of that if I didn't use my phone to document myself and everybody through my journey. Now, I say I vlogged it, but because I was driving the entire day, I knew I wasn't going to stop to post anything. And I was going to do that when I got back home the next morning. Little did I know that I was not going to make it back home the next morning. I can only tell you this because technology is so advanced at this point in our lives that around 7:10 a.m. on Saturday, the 3rd of May, 2025, I was in a car crash. And the only reason why I can tell you technology is the reason why I can say this is because this device, my Apple Watch, sent a SOS message to my younger brother and my dad to say, crash detected. I remember setting up SOS on my contact list. I sent an SOS message. This must have been probably around last year. I sent an SOS message to my younger brother, who has always been known as the kid. He is saved in my phone as the kid. So going forward, we will be referring to him as the kid. And the SOS message went directly out to him at the point of testing. And he replied to me asking if it was a test. And I said to him, yeah, I just want to make sure that it works. I had no clue. I had no clue that that SOS message would potentially be the cause of saving my life. I had no clue that this device would be the cause of saving my life. So to take a pause on the storytelling, if you have an iPhone, a Samsung, a Huawei, any type of phone, I would like for you to set up emergency contacts in your phone. This asterisk shows emergency contacts. What that does is any type of health issue or scare that might be detected, it would automatically send an SOS message. And how you can do that is simply going to the contact list in your phone, selecting the name, scrolling down and selecting add to emergency contacts. Now I'm begging you, please, to only choose those that you know will help you in an emergency, because it is not a joke. Alongside that, if you have an iPhone or an Android, please can you set up Find My? Find My is another device that saved my life. What you can see here is myself and one of my Find My contacts. And what they're able to do is keep track of your live location. Anytime they go into Find My, they can see anybody that they have selected to be a contact. They can choose that. You can also choose your own devices on Find My. This would be my watch, this phone, my AirPods, the phone that I'm using to record my laptop. Like, as long as it's an Apple device, you can set it up on Find My. And you can also do the same on Android and any smartphone at this particular point. The impact of the crash is what my watch was able to detect. At that point, it was on my left arm. It was able to detect the impact of the crash and send an SOS message. And I'm not sure how long you have, as in the injured person has to reply to that SOS message. But if not replied to, it contacts the emergency service. What the SOS message does is that it has the exact coordinates of your location. If you are selected as the emergency contact, you would get that. Plus, when you link it to the Find My location, you would be pretty spot on. This part of the story, I'm not able to tell to the full degree because it isn't my story or my side of the story to tell. But my kid brother, the kid, received this SOS message and he didn't hear back from me and immediately called 911 from London, UK. Just to let you know that worldwide, the emergency numbers differ, but you can definitely call the emergency services from your home country to another country and just ask them to redirect you, because that's what the kid ended up having to do. He called 911, they heard a UK accent, they then transferred him back to 999, which he then had to clarify, no, this is the SOS message, this is the location, these are the coordinates, I need to be transferred back to 911. And in the time that he was transferred back, they were getting the live emergency call to say injured individual. I have no idea how that call went, who called, how they found me. Till this day, I have no idea. What I've been told is that they found me conscious. From the 3rd of May, which is a Saturday, to the 5th of May, which is a Monday. I apparently woke up on the 5th of May. I genuinely have no recollection of this at all. What I remember is Tuesday, the 6th of May. Apparently, what I remember from the 6th of May is what happened on the 5th of May. And who am I to argue? I was heavily sedated. I was in the intensive care unit. I can't argue with anybody. All I can tell you is I woke up confused, completely confused. I was laying on a hospital bed on my back, and I just remember opening my eyes. And if you've been in a hospital, you know they have like these rectangle ceiling squares, and you know they go diagonal and light comes from some of them. So I remember seeing that light and thinking, where am I? And scanning the room down, so from above to the end of the bed, and seeing my friend and being even more confused about where am I, because I know that if I'm in Toronto, he wouldn't be here. And that is no discredit to him. But just like the rest of us, we all have normal working lives. So where am I? And immediately when I recognize him, I realize I can't talk. And I can't talk because I am strapped to this bed with a C collar around my neck and an intubator down my throat. And I've got the biggest cast. Do you know what? Actually, no, I no. I don't even think I had the cast on at that moment. I remember being completely confused. Where am I and what happened? And why am I here? And what is going on? And imagine having all of these questions that you genuinely cannot ask because you have this thing down your throat. I suspect some sort of panic must have come because I remember my friend talking to me and telling me that he had his friend here with him and his friend wanted to pray for me. And all I could do was a thumbs up with my right hand at that point in time. And his friend came with the Bible, and I was able to look over. I couldn't turn, but I was able to look over with my eyes and see. And he opened the Bible and he started reading Psalm 23, which is a psalm that both my mom and dad brought us through almost my entire childhood with. And I just remember tears filling my eyes, thinking my parents are here, but they're not physically here. And that's all I remember of that day. And apparently that was Monday, the 5th of May. And Tuesday is such a blur that I can't even take you through the day. Tuesday is such a blur. I just remember seeing the kid with me and him not being allowed to stay with me, but I was told I was going to have a surgery tomorrow and he would come back in time for that surgery. And I don't remember anything else of that night. I remember waking up on Wednesday, the 7th of May. And at this point, the intubator was out of my throat. And they told me the surgery was going to be at 9. And I remember they tried to bring me down to, I guess, what is called the pre-surgery room or space at around 8. And I asked them if they'd reached out to the kid because they told him to be here at 9. And I did not consent to them operating on me a moment before he got here and I got to talk to him. And they said, yeah, they had, but they hadn't got through to him. And I'm just like, well, I'm just letting you know now, I do not give permission to anybody to touch me or take me through to anywhere until I see him here with me. And I managed to talk to him and he said he was on his way and I asked them to wait. And the only thing I remember pre that surgery was being introduced to the surgeon. Well, he introduced himself to me and he's like, oh, I'm the surgeon that's done all your other surgeries. We just have this last one to go. My brain is like, all the others? What do you mean? I remember my arm was in a cast. It was, because I remember laying there and like thinking when he said all other surgeries, I thought he just meant this. And he said it was on my upper arm. And I was like, I just have one question for you. And he was like, go ahead. I'm like, is the scar going to be on the front or back of my arm? And I know that that was the vainest thing I could have thought of in that moment. But in real time, all I know is that I pose like this. It's normally with my right arm, but sometimes I use my left. I pose like this. And I'm thinking, I don't know what you have to do, But if the scar has to be on the front of my arm, we're going to need to have a discussion about this. Thankfully, he said, no, it'll be on the back of your arm. I'm going to flip you on the operating table 180 and perform the surgery that way. I said, okay. This is the scar from my shoulder down right through to my elbow. And as you can see, I have a scar here and a scar here. So, Wednesday, the 7th of May, I go for this surgery and I'm woken up and I'm asked, do I know what day it is? Day or date? And I say, yeah, it's Wednesday, the 30th of April. And the nurse says, no, it's Friday, the 9th of May. And immediately, tears fell, because the first thought that came to my mind was, why do I not know the date or the month? And then I remembering that I had the surgery on Wednesday, which is why I was able to say it. But why is it now Friday? Why am I waking up on Friday? Like, when I tell you, there's so many ways in this life that you can feel vulnerable, and I can't speak to many of the other ways. But let me tell you, being or not being in control of your mind is immediate cause for vulnerability. And as time went on, I started to learn the severity of this car crash. I was in the ICU. I do not watch enough medical programs anymore from a trauma that I have as a child in the month of May, funnily enough. I stopped watching anything really medical related in 2004. And just recently, last year, I watched The Resident, which is the first like medical show I've watched. Yesterday, I started Grey's Anatomy, which is the first time I've ever watched even an episode of Grey's Anatomy. So I did not know the severity of being in the intensive care unit. And still now, when I think about it, I was in the ICU for 8 days. I know that I, was awake, or I had a period of awakeness. But pretty much for 6 of those days, I will never get those days back. They say never, but I'll never get those days back. There's always going to be a part of the story that nobody will ever be able to answer for me, because I was driving solo. I was by myself at the time. I don't know, alongside the kid who called the emergency service, if there were other drivers passing by that called the emergency service. I'm still yet to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 discharge medical history on little old me and what took place between the 3rd of May and the 7th of May. And life is so funny. because in a normal world, right? Let's bring it back to travel. When you're on holiday, those like 4 days feel like they've gone so quickly. When you're on like a week vacation, you're like, oh my days, I'm already halfway through. Like, it's nearly time to pack my bags and get ready to go home. And, what's the saying? Time flies when you're having fun. I know that it only sounds like 4 days on paper and in the calendar, but for those 4 days, some of the most important people in my life were sat beside themselves, not knowing if I was going to make it or how I was going to make it, what state I would be in once I made it. And some thoughts just don't bear to think about. I can't ask these people again, how did you feel during that time? Because over the past 6 months, I've been making some great progress that I feel terrible for even wanting to make them relive that. But it's all part of bringing closure to me for the part that my brain can't process or can't remember or isn't aware. Sunday, the 11th of May, was the North American Mother's Day. And although I'd asked for my phone back on the 9th of May, I wasn't ready to have it back. So I immediately gave it to the kid and was with him presently. And on the 11th of May, I asked for my phone back because I ignorantly thought that my community, my followers on Instagram would be thinking or second guessing, where am I? Or, oh, we haven't seen her post for a bit. And I was this close to posting something that was so unrecognizably insensitive to myself, unrecognizably insensitive to what I was going through at that moment in time. It was Mother's Day, and I've come on, and all I'm seeing is love being shared and appreciation being shared. And I wanted to post a video of me hopping through the crowd in Trinidad after I had twisted my ankle. But I'm laying here and I've been told that I'm not allowed to walk and I'm not allowed to stand. And this is the video that I want to post. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. One thing I can honestly say about myself is I'm not going to lie to the internet. I'm not going to lie to my community. I'm not going to lie to my people. I'm not going to lie to myself. I can be going through this and I can post anything else. I can repost anything else. Why would my thought process to be to post something that physically and medically I can't do at this moment in time? In that moment, I saw a post from, I don't even want to call her a follower because she's actually somebody that I know. I've been blessed enough to meet her in real life. I saw a post from her and she posted, it was a praise and worship song called Broken People, by Isaiah Horton. And I clicked the link and it brought me to YouTube. Emotionally, like immediately, sorry, I became emotional because I was like, oh, in its literal term, I'm broken right now. In its literal term, I'm broken. YouTube does what the algorithm will do, and it brought me to his other praise and worship mixes, if you wish to call them. From the 11th of May, 100% every single day in hospital, 100% every single day after I got out of hospital, but less more so over the last 2 weeks. I have listened to that 2.5 hour praise and worship every single day. I want to tell you that alongside that, and having my kid brother who flew from London to be right by my side, those are the only two things that mentally got me through being in hospital in America, might I add, for 26 days. I've told you about Find My, I've told you about emergency contacts. I'm here to tell you about insurance. As a traveler, it would be very irresponsible of me to not have insurance, but also not to advise you to have insurance. I have worldwide coverage insurance that I purchase annually. Now I live in Canada, my insurance looks different, but prior to that, every single year at the beginning of the year, I would buy worldwide annual travel insurance. So anywhere I went in the world, I would never have to think about getting travel insurance. I have a credit card that covers travel insurance. In fact, I have two credit cards that cover travel insurance. On the rental itself, the travel insurance was somewhat $20 for the day. And somehow I managed them to be so busy that it was dismissed, it was overlooked, it wasn't mentioned, and I didn't take out and the rental cars travel insurance for the day. But I'm telling you, even if you have all of these other insurance that I've mentioned, please, the cost of getting it for 20, 30, 40, $50 a day is nothing compared to what the medical bill in one of these files cost. I came out of ICU after 8 days and I had multiple surgeries. I had my C collar on because I fractured my C1. Your C1 is the highest point of your spine. Understand that if it breaks, you are paralyzed from the neck down. I thank God. My spleen ruptured on site or at the point of crash. I had internal bleeding. They took out my spleen. This is a silicone patch that I have on to minimize the keloid scarring that I have. If that bled to the point of no return, I wouldn't be here right now. I had 7 fractured ribs. We have 12 ribs on each side, and I fractured over half on one side. As a result of those 7 collapsed lungs, 7 fractured ribs, one of them pierced my lung a little, which meant I had a collapsed lung. If that went fully in, I probably wouldn't be here right now. I broke my humerus. I broke my ulna. I broke my pinky finger. And I bet you're wondering why I wasn't able to walk or able to stand. It's because I broke my pelvis and my sacrum. Imagine your sacrum to be the part that holds your pelvis together, but also holds your spine in place. It also helps the function of your bladder. Imagine it to be your tailbone, your coccyx. That is your sacrum, and I broke that. The biggest, heaviest, strongest bone in your body is your femur, your thigh bone, and I broke that. I cannot to this day fathom. You can already see, like, I am petite. I weigh practically nothing. You think about our suitcases that we travel with, that we know are supposed to be 23 kg or 50 pounds. I don't even weigh two of those. And in hospital, I barely weighed one of those. And somehow, God wrote my story that I would make it through all of that. I didn't know the extent of my injuries when I was in ICU. I was getting pockets of being told what was wrong. On the 11th of May, when I listened to that praise and worship, which was from 2020, by the way, it was recorded in November 2020. I just realized it's nearly 5 years old and saved me 6 months ago. Every time I felt anxious, I felt nervous, I felt worried, I felt disorientated, I felt discombobulated, I felt confused, I felt scared, God did. I had the best nurses in ICU, the best nurses in ICU. I remember the morning of the 11th of May and just being so disorientated. My energy was so off. And my night nurse could see, and she, brought me a cold rag to lay and put on my forehead. And she offered to put some like meditating music on the TV for me so I could just kind of zone out. And my day nurse came in shortly after that, and I just had to let her know. I was like, look, my energy is really off. I'm sorry. Can we like circle back? And she asked me if I needed any medication, and I said I'll be fine. And she asked if she could go see her other patients, which I agreed to, and said she would come back to me. And thankfully, when she came back, I managed to like recenter and reground myself. And she had thanked me for expressing that my energy was off, and it opened a whole world of conversation and communication between me and her. That it was so funny that the Saturday before, when I had her, I felt like she wasn't that friendly or that warming or that welcoming or that nice. And all it took was for me to be transparent, to tell her that I didn't have it right now. And she appreciated that and was able to meet me where I was at. And the next day, I got the chest tube taken out, and I got to wet a flannel and, or a rag with some soap. Oh, the smell of the soap, you just don't understand. It's not even about taking things for granted. It's just about the amount of appreciation that we don't have for the little things. The little things make us as people. They brought me Bath and Body Works shower gel, sorry. Just the smell alone brought water to my eyes. I was so thankful, not even to be able to smell, but to be able to put hot water and soap on my skin. And there's just all this like dirt coming off of me. And I was just like, oh my days. So in the whole time I was here, nobody could put water and soap on my skin. What are you telling me? Oh, I got to eat that day, like not a liquid diet. I got to have a sandwich, and the sandwich was, to this day, the best chicken sandwich I've had, to the point that I ended up choking myself because I was so excited to eat it. And that made the ENT doctor say I couldn't go on solids for an extra couple of days until I basically calmed myself down enough to be able to eat. I went outside for the first time on the 12th of May. And I say for the first time because honestly, those 3 days from Friday the 9th of May to Monday the 12th were the longest not being able to get out of that hospital bed. Me, the kid, my ICU nurse went outside, and oh my days, you have no idea what fresh air feels like until you're confined in a room that you cannot voluntarily leave by yourself. I don't even think I've smelt air the way I inhaled. Oh, to then come back in the room and be told I'm being discharged from ICU. What? Again, bearing in mind at that point, I didn't know the severity of even being in an intensive care unit, but I knew that it was great news that I was getting out of there. But I didn't prepare for the fear that was going to come the next day or even that night, sorry, of not being monitored 24/7. If you've ever been in an ICU unit, you are hooked up to the IV machines and they are beeping 24/7. And if you breathe incorrectly, somebody knows that you've done that and they're right in there to check on you. So being told that I'm being stepped down to a regular ward, what do you mean? I could not sleep at all that next night. First of all, I was in an ICU ward, like in a room by myself. Now you've put me on a ward with somebody else who, what? Like my ribs are still healing. They are coughing and I can't afford to catch anything. Why is this happening to me? And the next day, one of the caseworkers comes to see me and says, "Oh, we're still trying to get in touch with your insurance, and we're having a difficult time. I just want to let you know um, that your bill is." And I can't. It's annoying me. I can't remember the exact figure right now, but it's $53,000, close to $54,000 and counting. And I'm like, the insurance will figure it out. That's what they're there for. You keep chasing them. I've paid them. You figure that out. Immediately after that, I'm told I'm going to be doing physiotherapy. And I'm like, physiotherapy? I can't even I can't even shift myself in this bed. What do you mean physiotherapy? One thing about the American healthcare, they don't play. Let me tell you that. I had physiotherapy and occupational therapy for 20, I can't even think. From the 13th of May to the 29th of May, that's 16 days. I had physiotherapy and occupational therapy every single day. And man, oh man, that first session was my physiotherapist trying to get me out of the bed to sit on the chair. What? I definitely didn't want to do that. It's not that I didn't want to get out of the bed, it's that I didn't want to feel physically and mentally that I couldn't get myself out of the bed. One thing about me though, I'm going to fight until the very end. I'm going to fight until I've got nothing left to give. And I promise you that even when I've got nothing left to give, I'm going to breathe and I'm going to find something to get through it. And I can thankfully say that I noticed myself getting stronger as the days were going, not realizing how weak I actually was. I didn't even have a thought process of being weak. I had a thought process of I'm going to get back to being me. I have to get back to being me. I only know me. I've worked so hard on being internally happy for the past 5 years. I can't go back now. I can't. I can't focus on the fact that I'm not allowed to stand. I can't focus on the fact that I can't use my left hand. I can't focus on the fact that I can't turn my neck. I can't look left. I can't look right. I can't look up. I can't look down. I can't eat properly because I can't open my jaw wide enough. I'm not focusing on any of these things because this storm will pass. It has to. There's no other option. And where we talk about my stubbornness, this is the part that I want people to see, not the hard-headed going against the grain. No, I fight for myself and I fight for those that fight for me. And I cannot tell you how grateful and thankful I am to have the people that have been beside me from before this happened to during it happening right now, and they will be here after because I refuse to let them go. I refuse to let them go. I spent 26 days in hospital in upstate New York, in Syracuse. I then got transported back by land because I was unable to fly because of my collapsed lung on the 29th of May. And I went to spend a further 21 days in hospital in Port Perry. So altogether, I spent 48 days in hospital this year. And they brought me in on the 3rd of May on a stretcher of some kind, hooked up to all sorts. And on the 19th of June, I was wheeled out to the sidewalk or the pavement in a wheelchair by the cleaner in the hospital to then be able to use my walking cane to walk from that point to the car. On the 16th of June was the first day I was able and allowed to stand on my 2 feet from the 3rd of May when I walked into the car and wasn't able to walk out. And as overwhelming as it was to think I can't fall, I just didn't focus on falling. I focused on standing. I focused on putting my left foot in front of my right. I focused on what needed to be focused on. It's been 6 months. There's so many layers to this life-changing story. But I just want to leave you guys with some positivity. September came and everyone was talking about the great lock-in. October came and everyone was talking about the great lock-in. It's November now. And I'm not encouraging you to lock in. I'm not encouraging you to follow that trend. I'm asking you for every single day that you are granted good enough health, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, for every single day that you are granted good enough health, my ask is for you to show up for yourself. Show up for you, because only you know the thoughts that are happening in your head daily. Only you know the feelings that you're going through hourly. Only you know how hard you might find certain days. But I implore you, for as hard as those days are, at the end of every single day, please just give thanks that you made it through and you showed up for yourself. This is Jitsi Jones, and this was probably one of the hardest stories. In fact, this is the hardest story I've had to tell, and there's more to come.